Some of you might remember the comic book action RPG called Superfuse that entered early access back on January 31st this year. Now, if you're like me, you sort of forgot about it. It just kind of drifted into the back burner and never really kind of popped its head back up, right? No really sort of big updates, no big announcements. The marketing campaign sort of just disappeared. So I wanted to check it back out and see, okay, what has happened to Superfuse? Where is it at today? And is it a dead EA game? Is it still alive and well? Let's figure it out. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you guys about today's sponsor, Marvel Contest of Champions. Now, if you haven't heard of it and you love fighting games or you love Marvel in general, I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So this game has over 250 Marvel characters that you can play as and then level up. Now, the best part is that you can fight other Marvel heroes or Marvel villains. You can have Iron Man versus Hulk, Deadpool versus Wolverine, and we can't forget about the classics, Spider-Man, Captain America, Thanos. You can even play as Kang the Conqueror. Now, this is a free-to-play fighting game on your mobile device, and they do have some really great reasons to jump in this December. So first off, Onslaught is joining the game. If you're a fan of Onslaught, buckle up because he is coming. Next, we have a holiday-themed event called I'm Not That Guy in a Red Suit, where Red Guardian assembles a team to stop fake Santa Claus letters. And to top all that off, there's an anniversary event from December 10th to 17th that'll be celebrating the game's 9th birthday with pretty killer rewards, things like a login calendar, special crystal shard arenas, and then rotating quests that you can use to enhance your champions. So there you have it, folks. If you're looking for a new challenge or something different to try, come and check out Marvel Contest of Champions using the link in the description. It's a free to download game on the App Store and Google Store, so you have nothing to lose. Now let's get back to the video. So I did some digging. Since then, there have been 4 updates, mainly targeting quality of life features and fixes, which is good. They're focusing on fixing the cracks in the foundation. But they've also teased some new features that are coming on the horizon, and they did it through a roadmap and then subsequent dev diaries. So we're looking at things like item modifications. You can use these to empower weapons and gear. This also comes with a corruption mechanic that'll randomly replace all of your item stats if you decide to push the modifications a little too far. Then we have augments, which these are like jewels from other action RPGs. Here you can add them to sockets to provide small boosts to stats. Then we have hideouts, which essentially is housing. We're going to have new heroes to play as, which is pretty welcomed right now because we just have 3 heroes to choose from, and each one has 2 separate specializations they can go into. And then lastly, we do have 2 new worlds to explore. So the first is Earth, which is going to be a new total planet that'll continue the Superfuse story. And then we have Ceres, which is a dwarf planet between Mars and Jupiter. Both of these are going to bring new bosses, enemies, quests, and towns to the game. So these should be pretty substantial areas to explore. Now, all of these things sound great for future editions. But the question I have is, how does the game look and play today? So I decided to dive back in for the first time since EA to check it all out. So first, the overall theme in the gameplay loop really hasn't changed much. You're still going to create a new hero, you're going to choose between online and offline characters, and then the game is going to send you through the story that we've experienced so far. So nothing new has been added here. The biggest kind of improvement that I noticed right out of the gate is optimization. The game is much more optimized than it originally was. A lot more of the areas are no longer experiencing any sort of FPS spikes or lag, so everything seems to be working smoothly in terms of optimization. Now, in terms of gameplay, there have also been some pretty good changes. So first, potion charges, they call them boosters. These are now auto pickup, and thank God, because I really wish this system would just change to refill on kill, but making the charges auto pickup is an absolute fantastic change, because before I would spend lots of time just clicking on individual charges laying on the ground. I mean, when you kill a group of enemies and they drop 15 charges, you're sitting there clicking 15 times to pick all of these things up, and it took away from the gameplay, and it just was a more frustrating feature than a cool feature. Now, the game also does feel a little bit faster and less of a slog. So before, my character felt like they were running through mud, and the game just didn't feel modern. It just felt slow, it felt outdated, and again, it wasn't fun. Now you move faster, it feels like you cast a little bit faster as well, animations are sped up a little bit, and it just looks like a little bit quicker of a game, which I think in today's world is welcomed. And then we have the fuse system, the kind of the glory child of the entire thing, right? This was the thing that really kind of pulled a lot of people in. This is still intact and it's alive and well. And I still really like it. I feel like the amount of customization here is great. Being able to augment skills to do certain things, like attaching a homing fuse onto a fireball so that way it homes in on enemies. You can add splits, so instead of one fireball, you do 3. You can add shrapnel. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff you can do to kind of change that baseline skill. However, I do wish there were some more kind of big overarching fuses out there that would completely change it, change like a fireball into an ice ball or a lightning ball, and, you know, make it sort of go out and then bounce back. Those type of things. I think that would be a really cool thing to add. Maybe they'll add it down the road, and if they're in the game right now, I simply haven't found them yet. Now, the big hangups that I ran into are tied to both game balance and itemization. So while the game does feel faster to play, the smoothness of the entire kind of player progression arc doesn't feel great. So the game is going to take fairly large difficulty leaps throughout the story and into endgame. And they're doing this seemingly without any real sort of chapter breaks. You complete just a regular quest, and then you go pick up the next one, you move into the next area, only to find that your build efficiency is absolutely cut in half and suddenly not effective against the same enemy types that you were just slaughtering in the previous area. There's not a huge level difference, they're the same level, maybe one level higher, and nothing really changed except for the fact that you moved into a new area. So I did have to retool quite a few times in order to make it through the story. This isn't a showstopper, but it is something that affects the smoothness of gameplay and player progression. If a player is going through and suddenly this thing they built is just thrown into the mud, a lot of people get discouraged, and I don't think a lot of people are going to have the fortitude to go back and completely retool their character just to continue the sort of minor story that we're in right now. If it's a boss or something like that, that makes sense, right? Boss battles are supposed to be difficult. They're supposed to test your build. But if you move into a new area and you're fighting minions and suddenly they're 2 times stronger than the previous ones, that's where you start to have some questions and you start to get a little frustrated. So tied into game balance, we also have itemization. Now, itemization, my big thing here, is the same thing that I had with Diablo 4 when it first launched. I like the look and feel of the weapons and gear, but there just isn't anything out there that wows me. Nothing that has dropped has made me think, man, I really need to build around this, or this is a really, really cool piece of gear that I want to make work. Most of the time, they're just advanced stat sticks, or if they do provide some sort of interesting effect, it's way too weak to then build around, and instead, it's just a supplementary piece. So I'd like for them to get a little bit more creative here and bring something additional to the table. I mean, you have this fuse system that's really cool. You have all of these different things that are really creative in the game, and it just seems like itemization was left out. So those are my 2 like large complaints from revisiting the game, but I do want to touch on endgame really quick because I think this is not going to be the end-all be-all endgame. This is more of a placeholder, similar to how monoliths were for Last Epoch when they very, very, very first got added. They were very basic, and it was something to keep players occupied. Now, Last Epoch has continued to build on that, and now it's a pretty cool system. Maybe Superfuse will do the same. I'm not entirely sure. But once you complete the story, at least the story so far, the solar map will be unlocked. And this essentially allows you to run around like randomized maps with random modifiers. Now, these range from easy to adept to strong, and each map has an objective to complete. It could be something like kill 12 elites, it could be kill this named mob, and the modifiers that are on the map are both positive and negative. So it could be +3 enemy level, but plus 30% item rarity drop, something like that. Now, I'm not against the idea of maps. Again, I love maps. I think maps are a very easy and effective way to keep players playing, because people that play action RPGs like Diablo, like Superfuse, like Last Epoch, we are like little loot goblins. So we are looking for all sorts of loot. We're looking for that next big drop. We're looking at different things we can build around. So going out and having a constant source of gameplay and loot isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, we do see a large difficulty leap here again. I went from melting things at the end of the campaign to getting stomped at easy maps. And this goes right back to that smoothness of leveling and then transitioning into the end game system. I agree, there needs to be a challenge in end game. I'm not discounting that. But it shouldn't be night and day between the final campaign mission and then the first easy map that you tackle. I was able to go back into the campaign and grind some areas and rebuild to overcome it, but it just wasn't a fun experience. And I get this is early access, you know, this is not damning or anything like that, but it is just something that they need to focus on. And right now it is sort of a simple system, but again, I hope they continue to build on it because I do think the foundation is good. So overall, guys, I mean, my time with Superfuse, I think it's in a really good spot right now. There are some very obvious things they need to work on as an early access title. Now, I'm interested in seeing how their autumn update rolls out with the new planets, the new gear, the new heroes. Hopefully, it brings some much needed polish to the game as well. It seems like they're focusing and spending a lot of time and effort on making sure that this autumn update is an absolute banger, which is great. Now, for me, I'm preparing for the last Epoch launch. I'm leveling up in New World because New World's got me hooked again, and I'm checking out some indie games in the meantime. I'm going to continue to keep an eye on Superfuse, but I want to hear from you guys. Have you gone back to revisit this game? Has it completely left your mind? And you're like, whoa, yeah, Vulkan. I mean, I haven't thought about that. Let me know in the comment section below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.